Have you ever seen a moment so cruel it steals the air from the room? A rich man in a tuxedo slapping his pregnant wife in front of hundreds of people, and worse, doing it while holding hands with his mistress. I know it sounds like a nightmare, but it's real. And what came next? Nobody, not even him, could have predicted. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about power, art, and the rise of a woman they tried to erase. Trust me, stay until the end. Now, let's begin. The chandelier above shimmered like 1,000 stars, casting a golden glow across the grand ballroom. It was the annual Infinite Future Gala, hosted at the Montclair Hotel, a place where only the most powerful were invited. Waiters weaved through the crowd with trays of oysters and champagne, while a quartet played soft jazz in the background. Everything gleamed. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. The room had just gone silent. Then it happened. Smack! A sharp, sickening slap cracked through the air like lightning splitting the sky. The music stopped. Conversations froze, and every head turned. Standing near the stage, in front of the charity auction podium, was Nicholas Kane, one of the richest tech moguls in America. His hand still suspended midair, his face twisted in rage. Beside him, his young mistress Kira Sloan looked smug, lips curled into a cruel smirk, and in front of him was her, Sophia Kane, 8 months pregnant. Wearing a pale blue gown that gently hugged her swollen belly, a custom piece from a forgotten designer. She didn't wear sequins or diamonds that night, just a simple silver chain and the weight of everything she had endured. Sophia staggered slightly from the force of the slap. Her hand instinctively went to her face and then down to cradle her belly. Her eyes widened, not just from the pain, but from the betrayal. The room erupted. Did he just slap her? Whispered one woman, gasping. She's pregnant, cried another, clutching her pearls. Phones were already raised, recording, capturing every second. But Nicholas, in his rage, didn't seem to care. You just had to show up, didn't you? He hissed. You had to ruin my night? Sophia blinked slowly. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Not yet. Kira's laughter broke the silence like a blade. She really thought he wanted her here, she scoffed loudly, glancing around at the frozen crowd as if inviting their agreement. Sophia slowly turned her head toward Kira. No anger, no screaming, just a deep, heartbreaking sadness. She had come here for one reason, to support her husband, the man she had stood beside through years of silence, secrets, and sacrifice. And he had just humiliated her, publicly, violently. Security hovered near the edges of the chaos, unsure whether to intervene. Sophia's sister, Eliza, pushed her way through the crowd but stopped short, tears welling in her eyes. Sophia, she called softly, but Sophia didn't move. Nicholas turned back toward the silent crowd, throwing up his hands like he was the victim. What? You don't know the full story. She's crazy. She's been stalking me. That's when Sophia finally spoke. Her voice was low but powerful, and it sliced through the ballroom like ice. I'm your wife, she said, her eyes locked on him. And I'm carrying your child. Nicholas rolled his eyes. Yeah, well, not for much longer. The gasp that followed that sentence wasn't just from the cruelty of it. It was the cold, detached way he said it. Like she was disposable. Like the baby didn't matter. Like the last 10 years had been nothing. Sophia took a breath, her spine straightening. For a moment, she looked like she might collapse. But instead, something shifted, and then she smiled. Not the smile of a woman in denial, but the kind of smile that comes right before the storm. I hope the cameras are rolling, she said softly, because that will make the contest submission even more powerful. Nicholas's brow furrowed. What the hell are you talking about? But Sophia just turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the marble, each step steadier than the last. No tears. No screams. Just silent resolve. Later that night, the video would go viral. #Slapgate would trend for 72 hours straight. Feminist groups, celebrities, politicians, all would weigh in. But what no one knew at that moment was that Sophia's unborn child, still months from birth, would eventually recreate that exact scene with a single painting. A painting that would sweep through the global art world, capturing not just the pain, but the power of that moment. The raw truth of what it meant to be betrayed, humiliated, and still rise. But before the world saw the art, before Sophia reclaimed her name, before Nicholas Kane's empire crumbled, there was this night. A moment of unbearable pain. The kind of pain that changes a person forever. And it started, as many tragedies do, with a man who thought money gave him the right to crush the woman who built his world. But what Nicholas forgot, what Kira laughed off, what everyone in that ballroom misjudged, was that Sophia Kane wasn't just a woman scorned. She was a mother in the making. And nothing is stronger than a woman protecting her child. Sophia Grace Kane wasn't always the woman people whispered about at fundraisers and luxury galas. Long before her name was trended, twisted, and tossed around in scandal, she was just a quiet girl from Aurora, Illinois. A girl who never wanted the spotlight, who grew up in a two-bedroom home with creaky floors and mismatched plates, where love was shown through warm meals and handmade birthday cards. She was 32, a trained art therapist. A woman who spent most of her adult life helping children process trauma through color, shape, and silence. Ironically, it was through her own trauma that she would one day change the world without meaning to. Her mother, Patricia, had been a kindergarten teacher, warm and wildly creative, always humming 80s ballads while making oatmeal. Her father, Joel, passed away when Sophia was just 9, taken by a heart attack one winter morning while shoveling snow. That day became a frozen scar in her memory. After that, it was just her and her mother. Best friends, soulmates. Sophia didn't grow up around wealth. She didn't understand silk table linens or $20,000 clutches. But she understood people. She understood emotions. She understood pain. That's why she went into therapy. Not for the prestige, but for the purpose. She never cared for grand things, even when she met Nicholas. Ah, Nicholas Kane. Back then, he wasn't the headline-hungry mogul he would become. When they met, he was charming, passionate, and full of dreams. He was still building his tech company, working late nights out of a rented co-working space. They met at a charity silent auction for underfunded schools. Sophia had been invited last minute by a fellow therapist who couldn't attend. She had no plans to bid on anything. She barely had student loan payments under control. But she went anyway, lured by the promise of free snacks and quiet conversation. Nicholas spotted her by the hors d'oeuvres table. She wore a knee-length thrifted dress, navy blue with a slightly crooked zipper. He said she looked like calm in a room full of noise. She laughed. He told her she had poet's eyes. She rolled her own. They talked all night, about childhood dreams, about their moms, about their fears. He told her he wanted to build technology that made people's lives better, not just richer. She told him about a 6-year-old boy who drew only in red and refused to speak after his father went to prison. They weren't from the same world, but something about the way he listened and the way she saw right through him created a pull neither of them could resist. Within months, they were inseparable. Nicholas proposed a year later, kneeling in a patch of sunflowers in a field outside Napa. The ring wasn't huge, but it was his grandmother's, and the moment was perfect. Sophia believed she was living a love story. She believed he saw her, not just as a partner, but as an anchor. She moved into his small condo. She made his favorite meals. She decorated their first office space with potted succulents and handmade signs that read things like innovation with heart. She celebrated every funding round with him, every tech award, every late-night pitch rehearsal. And slowly, as his world expanded, hers shrank. She put her art therapy career on hold to help him travel, to be available when he needed her. She still volunteered, still taught kids to draw through their grief. But her own voice, her own needs, they got quieter. She didn't notice at first. That's the thing about losing yourself in love. It doesn't come like a fire. It comes like fog. The bigger Nicholas's company became, the more distracted he grew. His smiles grew shorter, his touches colder. Their late-night talks turned into late-night meetings she was no longer invited to. Sophia told herself it was just a phase, the stress of expansion, the burden of success. She told herself this even when he started dressing differently, talking differently, surrounding himself with people who valued wealth over wisdom. She still made excuses when he missed dinner, or forgot her birthday, or pulled away when she tried to kiss him in public. Because Sophia didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to believe the man she fell in love with, the man who once wrote her love letters on hotel notepads and made pancakes shaped like hearts, could disappear into power. Then she got pregnant. It was unexpected, not planned, but not unwelcome. When she saw the pink line, something in her lit up. Fear, yes, but also hope. She thought maybe this was what they needed, a reset, a reason to reconnect. When she told Nicholas, he stared at her for a full minute before finally saying, "That's wow. Okay." That night, he didn't come home. The pregnancy was rough, morning sickness, fatigue, loneliness. She attended her ultrasounds alone. She bought the crib alone. She talked to her belly more than she talked to her husband. Still, she didn't give up. She painted the nursery in soft yellows and kept sending Nicholas sonogram photos. He rarely replied. When she finally confronted him, really confronted him, he didn't deny it. There was someone else, younger, wilder, more aligned with his lifestyle. Sophia didn't cry that night. She didn't scream. She just sat there, her hands folded neatly in her lap, and listened to him describe how he'd outgrown their marriage. "I need someone who understands ambition," he'd said. You're stuck in comfort." That's when she knew. It wasn't that she wasn't enough. It was that he never truly saw her. He only saw what she gave him. And the moment she stopped giving, he started looking elsewhere. But what Nicholas Kane failed to realize, what he never paused long enough to consider, was that Sophia Kane was never just his support system. She was her own force. And the child she carried would carry more than just blood. They would carry her strength, her vision, her fire. The Montclair Grand Ballroom was a masterpiece of modern opulence. Towering archways framed with gold leaf opened into a sea of white marble, each tile polished to perfection until it reflected light like water. Crystal chandeliers hung from 30-foot ceilings, each one sparkling like frozen fireworks. The scent of imported roses, fresh from Ecuador, mingled with hints of caviar, champagne, and truffle oil from the caterers drifting through the air. This was not just any event, it was the Infinite Future Gala, an annual gathering of the world's wealthiest entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and philanthropic elites. The kind of people who donated millions over hors d'oeuvres and made business deals in between jazz sets. The theme that year was Innovation Meets Impact. Banners with bold fonts hung from the mezzanine, featuring portraits of tech leaders and their charitable foundations. Every guest received a program wrapped in silver ribbon, detailing the night's auction items and honorees, including, at the top of the list, Nicholas Kane. The very same Nicholas Kane who would moments later slap his pregnant wife in front of the entire room. But hours before that moment, before the gasp, the silence, the phones raised in disbelief, the evening began with glamour. Sophia Kane stood just inside the marble entrance, clutching a beaded clutch in one hand, the other resting lightly on her belly. She hadn't been to a gala in over a year. Her maternity dress, a custom pale blue silk design, hugged her figure modestly. She wore no diamonds, no glittering tiara, only small pearl earrings and a gentle dignity that somehow made her stand out more than the women dripping in gold. She almost hadn't come. Part of her wanted to skip it entirely. She knew Nicholas would be there with Kira, his 25-year-old strategic branding consultant, who was now far more than just an employee. But something inside Sophia had told her to go, not to cause a scene, but to be seen. For the first time in months, she had done her makeup with care. Soft, smoky eyes, neutral lipstick. She curled her chestnut hair into waves that spilled down her back. It wasn't vanity, it was armor. As she stepped inside, people noticed. Not just because she was visibly pregnant, but because of her calm, her quiet strength, the kind of presence that made people whisper even if they didn't know why. "Is that Sophia Kane?" one woman whispered. "She looks incredible," murmured another. Sophia didn't hear them. She didn't need to. She walked slowly, deliberately, scanning the room until her eyes landed on him. Nicholas. He was holding court at the front of the room, near the silent auction tables. Surrounded by investors and influencers, he laughed loudly, his hand resting casually on the small of Kira's back. Kira wore a plunging red gown that clung to every curve, her blonde hair swept into a high ponytail. She looked like every stereotype of the woman who gets chosen second, but loves every minute of it. Sophia paused, her stomach tightening, not from fear, but from something more primal. She moved toward the far side of the room, pretending not to see him. Her plan had been simple. Stay quiet, congratulate the right people, and leave. But fate, as it always does in stories like this, had other plans. A few minutes into the evening, the MC took the stage. Spotlights beamed down as he welcomed the guests. Tonight, he announced, we honor a visionary, a man who changed the world of tech, who invests not only in innovation, but in humanity. Please welcome Nicholas Kane. Applause erupted. Cameras turned. Nicholas adjusted his cufflinks, then began his slow, confident walk to the stage, Kira on his arm. He didn't see Sophia at first, but Kira did. Their eyes locked like gunfire across the room. Kira's smirk widened. She leaned in and whispered something into Nicholas's ear. That's when he turned. Their eyes met, and for a brief second the noise faded, the lights dimmed, and it was just the two of them. One man, one woman, 10 years of history. Nicholas didn't blink. He didn't smile. He stared at her like she was a problem that had followed him into his new world. Sophia didn't look away. When he reached the stage, Nicholas launched into his usual charm routine. Thanked his team, thanked the investors, thanked the audience, never once mentioned his wife. And as he stepped down, the room seemed to lean toward him, waiting to see what would happen next. Sophia had planned to leave then. She had promised herself she wouldn't get involved. But as Nicholas walked back into the crowd, Kira clinging to him like a badge of conquest, something in Sophia cracked. She walked toward them. Not fast, not storming, just steady. And when Nicholas turned and saw her approaching, his face froze. "What are you doing here?" he hissed. "I was invited," she said evenly, "like every year." Kira rolled her eyes. She probably thought this was a school fundraiser. The insult barely registered. Sophia kept her gaze on Nicholas. "Congratulations," she said, nodding to the plaque in his hand. The speech was nice, a little ironic, but nice. "Leave," Nicholas whispered sharply. "Now." "You're making a scene," Kira added. Then came the moment. The moment no one could take back. Nicholas stepped closer to her. Too close. And with the entire ballroom watching, phones already raised, he raised his hand and struck her. A slap that echoed through more than just air, through history, through hearts, gasps, screams. Chairs scraped the marble. Sophia didn't fall. She straightened and said only one thing. "You'll regret that." Nicholas Kane was once considered the ideal modern mogul, a visionary, a man who climbed out of a tiny rented studio apartment in Brooklyn and rose to dominate the tech world. His software company, Kaneverse, became a household name after revolutionizing remote work platforms. By 35, he was on the cover of Time magazine. By 37, he was giving TED Talks about digital empathy. But behind the sleek suits and polished sound bites was a man no one really knew, except Sophia, and she knew him too well. Nicholas had always had a hunger in his eyes, even during the early days when he would cook pasta in their tiny kitchen and promise he was doing it all for them, for there was a fire in him that never settled. He was obsessed with winning, not just financially, emotionally. He didn't just want to succeed. He wanted to be envied. At first, Sophia mistook that ambition for drive. She supported him, defended him, forgave his long absences, his sharp words, his rising ego. Even when he started making subtle jabs at her career and therapy, "You help kids draw pictures while I close billion-dollar deals," she brushed it off. She told herself he was stressed, that success was changing him, that if she just stayed patient, he'd come back to her. He didn't. Instead, he found someone new, and not quietly. Kira Sloan entered their lives through a rebranding campaign. She was hired to revamp Kaneverse's image, more bold, more daring, more Gen Z. Sophia met her once in a boardroom filled with glass and tension. Kira wore a white blazer with nothing underneath. She greeted Sophia with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and called her sweetheart like they were old friends. Sophia didn't miss the way Kira leaned into Nicholas during the meeting, or how Nicholas kept glancing at her lips. It didn't take long after that for things to unravel. Nicholas stopped coming home on weekends, stopped touching Sophia, stopped pretending. The first time she asked him directly, "Are you cheating on me?" he laughed, a soft, cruel laugh. "You always make everything so dramatic," he said. "It's just work." But it wasn't just work. It was Kira. And Sophia knew it. She found hotel receipts, a lipstick-stained cocktail napkin in his jacket pocket, a message on his phone, "I missed last night already," from a contact saved as Kevin. When she confronted him again, there was no more denial, no more lies. "Yes," he said flatly, "and no, I'm not sorry." He didn't apologize. He didn't try to explain. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Instead, he accused her of being the problem. "You've changed," he said. You used to be exciting. Now all you do is nest and whine and act like your pregnancy gives you moral authority. Newsflash, it doesn't. Sophia stood in their kitchen that night, heart pounding, belly heavy, hands shaking, and Nicholas? He packed a bag and left without looking back. The next day, tabloids exploded. Tech titan Nicholas Kane spotted with mystery blonde. A week later, meet Kira Sloan, Kane versus sexy new muse? Photos followed, of Nicholas and Kira in Malibu, kissing on a yacht, holding hands at a fashion show. The world devoured their affair like candy. And Sophia? She became a ghost, erased from the narrative. Even their shared friends distanced themselves. Whispers began. Maybe she was boring. He outgrew her. She was just a therapist. What did she expect? But Kira Sloan wasn't just a mistress. She was a strategist. She knew how to play every angle. On Instagram, in boardrooms, on red carpets. She posted vague captions like, "Don't settle for safe when you can have spectacular," with photos of her wrapped in Nicholas's arms. She gave interviews subtly painting herself as misunderstood. And behind closed doors, she told Nicholas to cut Sophia off financially. "She'll be fine," Kira said. "She'll figure it out. Focus on us." Nicholas listened. Sophia's credit cards were frozen. Her car, leased under Nicholas's name, was repossessed while she was at a prenatal checkup. The mortgage on the home they shared was suddenly under renegotiation, and her name was quietly removed from the title. Sophia was 7 months pregnant, and she was being erased. But what neither Nicholas nor Kira understood, what they completely underestimated, was that betrayal doesn't destroy a woman like Sophia. It awakens her. She didn't scream or beg. She didn't go to the press. She didn't even reply to the tabloid requests. She just started planning, quietly, intelligently, with the same patience she once used to help children find their voice through art. Nicholas had taken her comfort, but not her power. And Kira? For all her designer clothes and public confidence, she couldn't hide the fact that she was still a shadow standing in Sophia's light. The night of the gala, the moment Sophia walked in, Kira knew. She saw it in Nicholas's eyes. The moment he saw Sophia standing at the entrance in that soft silk dress, glowing with quiet defiance, something shifted. It was the first time he'd looked uncertain in weeks. And Kira felt it. That's why she pushed him. That's why she whispered, "Are you really going to let her ruin this night?" That's why Nicholas raised his hand, not just out of anger, but out of fear, because deep down he knew he had made a grave mistake. And Sophia? She was done staying silent. The moment would be replayed a million times, from phone screens to primetime news, pixelated, slowed down, dissected frame by frame. But nothing could compare to what it felt like being there. Right there, under the gold chandeliers of the Montclair Ballroom, right in the middle of New York's wealthiest crowd, right in front of CEOs, journalists, influencers, and investors. When Nicholas Kane slapped his pregnant wife, the sound echoed like thunder over a glassy lake. Sophia Kane didn't fall, but the way she stood, still, stunned, one hand over her cheek, the other over her belly, pierced the air like a silent scream. Her calm grace made the act feel even more barbaric. The world didn't just witness a slap. They witnessed an unraveling. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then came the gasp, the ripple of hands over mouths, the flash of phone cameras. Some tried to pretend they didn't see. Others turned away out of fear or cowardice. But a few brave souls stood frozen, their eyes wide in horror. Even the string quartet had stopped mid-note. Nicholas, breathing hard, didn't seem to understand the gravity of what he'd just done. "You think you can show up here and embarrass me?" he hissed, stepping toward Sophia again, like he still had control. Kira Sloan, his mistress, didn't stop him. In fact, she smirked. She stood tall in her red dress, a glass of Dom Perignon in hand, eyes gleaming with cruel delight. She whispered something under her breath, something only those closest to her could hear. "She's always had a flair for drama." That comment, later captured on a hot mic from a nearby TV reporter, would be played endlessly, quoted in articles, condemned across the internet. But Sophia didn't respond. Not to the slap. Not to the whisper. Not to the crowd now circling like vultures, unsure whose side they were supposed to be on. Instead, she took a breath, straightened her spine, and said, "You're going to regret this." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The words hung in the air like prophecy. She turned and walked away. Her heels clicked rhythmically against the marble floor. the sound echoing through the stunned silence. No one tried to stop her. No one dared. Security didn't move. The event coordinator froze. Kira raised her eyebrows as if amused, while Nicholas watched Sophia disappear into the crowd, his chest heaving with a mix of rage and something else, panic. Because somewhere, in the depths of his ego, he knew. He had gone too far. The night unraveled after that. People whispered in corners, debating what to do. Someone called the board of the Kane Foundation. Someone else alerted the PR team. Within minutes, damage control went into full spin. She provoked him. She's emotionally unstable. She's hormonal. But the videos told the truth. The videos, captured from 5 different angles, within minutes uploaded to every platform imaginable, showed a calm, pregnant woman being struck by her husband. And the internet doesn't forget. By midnight, the hashtags had started trending. Justice for Sophia, Kane cancelled, pregnant and powerful. At home, Sophia sat on her living room couch, wrapped in a blanket, barely speaking. Her sister Eliza had picked her up from the gala, clutching her like glass the entire ride home. Sophia hadn't cried. Not yet. She just sat there, her hand gently resting on her stomach, staring blankly at the dark TV screen. "You should go to the police," Eliza said, pacing the room, "or the press, or file a restraining order, something." Sophia shook her head. "Not yet." "But he hit you, Sophia. In public, with that woman right there." "I know," she said quietly. "Do you want revenge?" Sophia's eyes slowly lifted to meet her sister's. They weren't red. They weren't wild. They were focused. "I want truth," she said. "I want the world to see what he really is. And I want our child to know I didn't break." That was all she said. The next morning, she woke to hundreds of missed calls. Journalists, lawyers, activists, strangers, women who had seen the video and wanted to stand with her. But Sophia didn't post anything. She didn't go live. She didn't do interviews. She did something else. She called her old mentor, Julia Rivera, a renowned human rights artist, and asked for canvas, paint, and silence. Then she began to paint. In her sunlit studio, surrounded by baby clothes and unopened gifts from baby showers she never had, she painted what she remembered. Not just the slap, but the moment, the colors, the stillness, the cruelty, the truth. What came out was a masterpiece, a raw, haunting scene. Sophia, mid-turn, with a soft glow over her belly. Nicholas's hand in motion, caught between violence and regret. Kira's smile painted like a slash of red against the backdrop of glittering chandeliers and cold, watching eyes. It was titled simply, "The Moment." And when her baby was born, 2 months later, healthy, strong, beautiful, Sophia submitted the painting in her child's name to the International Motherhood and Art Showcase. No one expected it to win. But it did. Not just the showcase, but every category. Critics called it the most important painting of the decade. News anchors called it a revolution in color. And Sophia? She stayed quiet, because the art said everything. The following days after the gala felt like walking through glass. Sophia Kane woke up to the sound of her name trending across the internet, but her body still trembled from the slap. Not from the physical sting, it had faded, but from the emotional weight it left behind. Betrayal didn't leave bruises on the skin, it carved into the soul. The walls of her townhouse felt colder now. The nursery she had so lovingly painted in soft yellows now looked like a hollow fantasy. The tiny clothes folded on the dresser, the ones with ducks and clouds, felt like props from a life that wasn't hers anymore. Sophia sat in bed for hours, staring at the sunlight pouring through the curtains. Her phone buzzed nonstop, messages from strangers, some offering support, some begging for interviews, some just sending stories of their own heartbreaks. She ignored them all. She didn't have the strength to explain herself, to speak, to be anything but still. Eliza came by daily, trying to coax her out of bed, sometimes with soup, sometimes with firm words, sometimes with a hug. But Sophia stayed quiet. "I just want to disappear," she whispered once. Eliza knelt beside her bed, her voice cracking. "You don't get to. You're not done yet." But Sophia felt done. She felt broken in places she couldn't name. Even simple things became impossible. Brushing her teeth, eating, standing too long. She was 8 months pregnant, and her body ached. Her heart ached more. She thought about the night she met Nicholas, the way he looked at her like she was magic. She remembered their first apartment, their inside jokes, how he'd make her pancakes shaped like hearts. How did it all become this? A slap, a mistress, a viral scandal. Every time she tried to move, memories pinned her down. One afternoon, she wandered into the nursery and sat on the floor, her back against the crib. She stared at the wall where she'd painted a tree. It had bright leaves and tiny birds. A tree full of life. But now it felt like a lie. Tears came then. Heavy, ugly sobs that racked her entire body. She cried for herself, for her baby, for the woman she used to be. She cried until her breath came in hiccups, until her throat burned, until she couldn't cry anymore. And even then, she kept sitting. The world outside kept spinning. News anchors debated the ethics of filming trauma. Feminist leaders cited her case as a wake-up call. Protesters stood outside Canver's headquarters demanding justice. Nicholas issued a cold public apology, saying it was a moment of stress. Kira posted a cryptic Instagram story. Some people need drama to stay relevant. Sophia didn't respond. She watched it all like a movie playing without her. People assumed she was plotting revenge, but the truth was, she didn't know what to do next. She felt nothing, and everything. All at once. Then came the night she collapsed. She was alone in the kitchen, trying to warm up soup. Her hands were shaking from days of barely eating. As she reached for the pot, a sharp pain shot through her back. Her knees buckled. She hit the floor hard. She lay there staring at the ceiling, too scared to scream. One hand flew to her belly, feeling the baby move, thank God. The other reached for her phone, but it had fallen under the counter. She couldn't reach it. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. This is it, she thought. This is how it ends. Then she heard pounding at the door. Her sister's voice. Sophia! Open up. Eliza had been calling. When Sophia hadn't answered, she'd driven over. She found the door unlocked and ran in to see Sophia on the tile floor, her lips pale, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes. An ambulance was called. Sophia was taken in on a stretcher, clutching her stomach like a shield. At the hospital, tests were run. The baby was okay, but Sophia was dehydrated, malnourished, and emotionally exhausted. The doctor's words were clinical but clear. You need to rest, Mrs. Kane. You're in survival mode. Sophia turned her head away. She didn't want to survive. She wanted to live. But she didn't know how to anymore. That night, she lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling tiles. It was quiet, except for the gentle beep of the monitor and the baby's heartbeat echoing in the room. That sound, steady and strong, did something to her. She realized she wasn't alone. That tiny rhythm, that little life inside her, it was counting on her. And that's when something inside Sophia shifted. She wasn't ready to fight yet, but she wasn't going to give up. Not for her baby, not for herself. The next morning, Eliza brought her a sketch pad. You don't have to talk, she said gently. Just draw. At first, Sophia stared at the blank page like it was a stranger. But slowly, she picked up the pencil. Her hands moved without thought. She drew a face, hers. Eyes red, hair messy, tears streaming, then another page, the slap, then another, the moment after, and then color. The first color she had touched in weeks, a soft blue, a bold red, a gold chandelier. She didn't know it yet, but she was starting to heal. Not with revenge, but with creation, with truth, with art. It started with an envelope. A plain, cream-colored envelope slid under Sophia Kane's hospital room door in the middle of the night. No name, no return address, just her first name written in delicate script, Sophia. At first, she thought it was another sympathy letter. Since the gala scandal, people had sent everything from handwritten poems to flower arrangements that filled entire rooms. She didn't open most of them. Her heart wasn't ready. But something about this envelope felt different. It was heavier and personal. She waited until morning before opening it. Sunlight poured in through the blinds as she tore the seal. Inside was a single letter and a document attached with a gold paperclip. Sophia, I know what he did, and I know who you really are. You don't need to suffer in silence anymore. It's time you remembered what you're capable of. The trust your grandmother created is still active. Everything is waiting for you. The world sees you as a victim. Let's remind them who you really are. Jasper Flint. Sophia blinked at the name. Jasper Flint, her family's former attorney, the man who had managed her grandmother's estate after her passing, the man who had promised to disappear unless she ever needed him again. And now he was back. She read the attached documents carefully. At first, her hands shook. Then her breath caught. It was all still there. The inheritance, the assets, the dormant investments in Swiss banks. The shares in the green energy conglomerate her grandmother had helped build. The multi-million-dollar property trust in her name. All of it. Untouched. Hidden behind legal protections. She hadn't touched a dime of it when she married Nicholas. She hadn't wanted him to know. Back then, she thought hiding her wealth would prove she wasn't like the women who chased power. She thought living simply was a way to build something real. She never told Nicholas. She never told anyone. She had left behind billions for love. And now she saw what love had cost her. Sophia closed the folder. Her fingers curled tightly around the pages. Her mind began to shift, reorganizing itself like a machine being rewired. She wasn't a broken woman anymore. She was a billionaire who had been betrayed, and she was done hiding. That afternoon, she called Jasper. His voice was the same as she remembered, calm, clipped, endlessly professional. "It's good to hear from you, Mrs. Kane." "It's Ms. Laurent now," she said. "I'm ready to reactivate the trust, but I want everything moved under a different name." "I anticipated that." "Shall we use the child's?" "Yes," she said. "Name the account after my baby." She hadn't even given birth yet, but already she was laying the foundation for something more powerful than revenge, a legacy. Within days, her world shifted behind the scenes. Bankers were called, properties were reassigned, security was arranged, and most importantly, Jasper connected her with a media team. Not for interviews, but for strategy. "I don't want to explain myself," Sophia said. "I want the truth to speak through art." He nodded. "Understood. But just so you know, Kaneverse stock has dropped 14% since the incident. Shareholders are questioning Nicholas's leadership." "Let them." She didn't need to attack him. He was doing it to himself. Nicholas still hadn't reached out, not to apologize, not to check on the baby, not to ask how she was coping. But she heard whispers. His team was scrambling, his brand deals were on pause, several nonprofits had severed ties, investors were nervous, he was losing control, and he had no idea just how bad it was going to get. Because Sophia wasn't just healing, she was rebuilding. With every brushstroke, every sketch, every canvas she filled in her new private studio, funded by the very fortune she once ran from. She found herself again. She painted without limits, scenes of strength, of mothers, of silence, of fire. One painting in particular stood out. It was titled Inheritance. A woman holding her baby, behind her, flames, in front of her, a mountain of gold. But her gaze, steady, unflinching, looked not at the gold or the fire, but straight at the viewer, daring them to look away. Sophia didn't submit it under her name. She entered the piece in an international contest under her unborn child's name, Elle Laurent. The theme of the contest was resilience. She never expected to win. But weeks later, she received the call. "You've been selected as the grand prize winner," the voice on the phone said. "It's the most powerful submission we've received in years." The painting would be displayed at the Global Museum of Modern Art, and it would tour internationally. When the press release went out, Sophia didn't make a statement. But the art world was stunned. "Who is Elle Laurent?" Became a trending search term. And Nicholas? He didn't find out until a reporter shoved a photo in his face at a press event. "Any comment on the award-winning painting by Elle Laurent? Sources say the child may be yours." Nicholas stared at the image, the woman, the baby, the fire. He froze. And that's when it hit him. He hadn't just lost his wife. He'd awakened a legacy he could never control. Sophia Kane, no, Sophia Laurent, no longer moved like someone uncertain. The soft, hesitant steps she used to take, always careful not to make things worse, had been replaced with the confident rhythm of a woman who knew exactly where she was going. Her walk had power now. Her voice, when she chose to use it, landed like a hammer wrapped in silk. It had been 5 weeks since the art contest went public, since the painting Inheritance began its world tour. Sophia still hadn't spoken to any media outlet. She had no need to. The public was already on her side. Victim turned visionary, artist turned activist, billionaire by bloodline. But behind the scenes, the real transformation was happening. It started with her wardrobe. Gone were the soft, forgettable dresses she once wore to fade into Nicholas's shadow. In their place, sharp silhouettes, crisp white blazers, structured gowns with fierce necklines. Nothing too flashy, just the kind of style that said, "I'm not trying to impress you. I already won." Her team, handpicked by Jasper, was small but lethal. A lawyer, a strategist, and a silent investor from Geneva who owed her grandmother a favor. Together, they built a new foundation in her baby's name, the Laurent Initiative. Its mission? Protect and empower women navigating abuse during pregnancy. In less than a month, it raised $4.6 million in pledges. The first gala was set, and Sophia would be the guest of honor. But it wasn't just about making a statement. It was about reclaiming the spaces she once tiptoed through. Taking up space, breathing without apology, living fully. She had moved out of the townhouse, too many ghosts. Now she lived in a glass-walled penthouse overlooking Central Park, a property held in a silent trust for years. The floors were walnut. The art was hers. The crib in the nursery was hand-carved maple. She would bring her baby into a new kind of home, one with no secrets, no begging for love, no walking on eggshells. Her therapist said this transformation was rare, not because women weren't capable of rising, but because so many didn't get the chance. "You caught yourself," she said once, "before the world erased you." But Sophia didn't feel lucky. She felt focused. The revenge everyone expected never came, not in the way Nicholas thought it would. She didn't sue him, didn't ruin him publicly. She didn't need to. He was unraveling just fine on his own. Caneverse stock plummeted another 22%. Several executives resigned. Photos of Nicholas looking disheveled in airports surfaced weekly. Kira posted less often. Her tone had shifted, more defensive, more cryptic. "People will twist anything. I'm just trying to live my truth," she wrote under a post that got 84,000 hate comments. But Sophia, she remained silent. Until the night of the Laurent Gala. That was the moment everything changed again. The gala was held at the Rosewood Conservatory, marble halls, glass ceilings, and candlelight flickering in crystal holders. The guest list included Fortune 500 CEOs, global philanthropists, and several major press outlets. But all eyes were on the woman who entered last, Sophia. She arrived in a floor-length black velvet gown, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun. No jewelry except a diamond ring on her right hand, her grandmother's. She didn't speak to the cameras, just walked, tall and radiant, into the space she now owned. When she took the stage, the room fell silent. "I was told," she began, "that silence is strength, that dignity means saying nothing when you're hurt, but I disagree." Her voice was steady, low, controlled. "True strength is speaking, creating, rebuilding." She paused. "I've been many things, daughter, therapist, wife, but today I stand here as a mother, and this legacy is for my child, and for every woman who thought silence was the only way to survive." Thunderous applause. Later, backstage, an executive from the Global Women's Council approached her with an offer to become an ambassador. A fashion house offered a campaign. A museum wanted a solo exhibit. She accepted none of them. "I'm not a brand," she said quietly. "I'm a builder." And she meant it. Over the next month, Sophia hired 10 women, each one a survivor, artists, coders, lawyers, mothers. She funded their projects, their dreams, their healing. And in private, she prepared for birth. There were still hard nights, still shadows, still moments when she looked at her baby bump and felt waves of fear. But then she remembered the slap, the silence, the moment everything shattered, and she'd place her hand on her belly and whisper, "We survived." She went into labor early one morning. No cameras, no entourage. Just Eliza holding her hand and a delivery room that smelled like lavender and courage. The baby came screaming into the world, tiny fists raised, lungs strong, a girl. Sophia held her close, tears falling freely now, and whispered, "You are mine, and I am yours. We build from here." The birth certificate listed one parent, Sophia Laurent, and under name of child, Luna Laurent, L for legacy and light. It wasn't a courtroom. It wasn't a screaming match. It wasn't a dramatic press conference. It was a gallery. The Laurent Foundation had announced its first official international exhibition, titled Mothers of Resistance. The event would be held at the Astoria Hall in Manhattan, an elite venue typically reserved for royalty-level donors and world leaders. But on that Thursday night, it belonged to Sophia Laurent. The invitation-only crowd buzzed with anticipation. Rumors had already spread that the artist behind the viral painting Inheritance, L. Laurent, was somehow connected to Sophia. But no one could prove it, until that night. The gallery itself was drenched in soft gold lighting, each painting hung with a single spotlight. Guests wandered from one image to the next in silence, reading titles like The Invisible Bride, Bruises You Can't See, and room 328. In the center of the room, veiled by white silk, stood the newest piece. The crowd gathered around it as Sophia took the stage. She wore an ivory suit tailored with razor-sharp edges. In her arms was her newborn daughter, Luna, wrapped in soft cream cloth. Her presence alone silenced the room. "I was told once that to survive pain, you must forget it," she began. "But I think survival is not about forgetting. It's about making it unforgettable for the right reasons." A spotlight moved toward the silk-covered frame. Sophia looked down at her daughter, then back at the audience. "And tonight," she continued, "I share with you the moment that made me, that nearly broke me, that gave birth to her." With a nod, the silk fell. The room gasped. There it was, the slap, frozen in paint, reimagined in stunning, brutal detail. Sophia, her face mid-turn, one hand on her swollen belly. Nicholas, hand raised. Kira in the background, blurry, irrelevant. The chandelier gleamed above them like a cruel halo. The piece was titled Breaking Point. The plaque read, "Artist L. Laurent, medium, oil on canvas. Owned and exhibited by the Laurent Foundation. Donated by Sophia Laurent." Nicholas had not been invited, but he came anyway. Of course he did. He arrived late, wearing his signature black coat and a desperate expression. He hadn't seen the piece until the moment it was revealed. And when he did, the color drained from his face. He moved closer, mouth slightly open, almost in disbelief. The crowd parted for him like smoke. Someone snapped a photo of the moment, him staring at the painting that immortalized his downfall. Later, it would be shared with the caption, "This is what accountability looks like." Nicholas stood frozen in front of the painting. Then his voice broke the silence. This is slander." Sophia didn't flinch. She walked calmly toward him, her daughter still in her arms. "This is truth," she said, "and the world finally sees it." Nicholas's jaw clenched. "You're trying to destroy me." "I don't have to," she replied, her voice cool. "You did that yourself. I just painted it." Then, calmly, she turned her back to him and walked away. The cameras didn't follow him. They followed her. Sophia gave a brief statement to the press outside the gallery. "I didn't make this exhibit for revenge. I made it for clarity, for justice, for my daughter, and for every woman who's been silenced, slapped, or shamed into staying quiet." The next morning, headlines dominated every feed. Sophia Laurent reveals she's behind L. Laurent art, the slap immortalized. Caneverse CEO humiliated by ex-wife's award-winning exhibit. From silence to spotlight, Sophia's masterpiece destroys Nicholas Kane. But the biggest blow wasn't public. It came privately. The Laurent Foundation announced it had acquired 4.8% of Caneverse stock. Enough to request a shareholder vote, enough to demand accountability, enough to push Nicholas out. The board didn't hesitate. His approval ratings had tanked. His recent behavior had cost them millions. And Sophia? She didn't just hold the pen now. She held the vote. The board met within the week. Sophia didn't attend in person. She submitted her proxy vote with a letter that simply read, "I believe Caneverse needs to return to its original vision, empathy through innovation, and that starts with new leadership." The vote passed. Nicholas Kane was ousted. Just like that. The man who once slapped his pregnant wife at a gala now found himself removed from his own empire, voted out by the woman he tried to silence. And Kira? She quietly deleted her social media accounts a day later. No more cryptic captions. No more red carpet appearances. She vanished from the narrative as quickly as she entered it. Justice didn't come with fireworks. It came with stillness, with clarity, with a woman reclaiming her power, not with fists or fury, but with art. The painting Breaking Point now hangs in the National Museum of Modern Art under tight security, constantly surrounded by visitors, educators, and students. It's studied in universities, quoted in activism seminars, admired by survivors across the world. But Sophia, she doesn't dwell on it. She's busy raising Luna, teaching her to speak boldly, teaching her to paint without fear, teaching her that sometimes the most powerful form of revenge is telling the truth beautifully. There's a quiet kind of strength that doesn't shout, it doesn't throw punches, it doesn't make noise, it stands, it breathes, it endures. Sophia Laurent didn't rebuild her life with vengeance in her heart. She rebuilt it with purpose, with clarity, with love. And as the sun rose on a quiet Sunday morning in her penthouse overlooking Central Park, she sat at her kitchen table, feeding her daughter a bottle, whispering stories about stars and colors and softness. Luna cooed, eyes wide and bright, fingers gripping her mother's hand like she already understood the legacy she had been born into. A legacy of resistance, of truth, of rebirth. Sophia had learned many things in the months following that infamous gala, but perhaps the most important truth was this. Women are not fragile. They bend, they break, they bleed, but they rise. Every time. She'd become a symbol, yes, a beacon, some called her. But she was more than that. She was proof. Proof that it is possible to lose everything and still create something extraordinary. That dignity doesn't come from silence. It comes from survival with grace. She never set out to inspire a movement. She just refused to disappear. Her inbox was now filled daily with messages from women across the world. I left because of you. You helped me speak out. I found my courage watching you stand still in that painting. But Sophia always replied the same way. You had it in you all along. The Laurent Foundation continued to grow, now with chapters in 5 countries. It provided legal assistance, therapy, and emergency housing for pregnant women escaping abuse. Every story added to Sophia's fuel, not because she saw herself as a savior, but because she saw herself in them. And while Nicholas Kane faded quietly into tech obscurity, his name mentioned less and less with each financial quarter, Sophia's grew stronger. But she never chased the spotlight. She kept her focus on Luna, on healing, on building. She often walked with Luna through the exhibit halls where her paintings now hung. She'd point to inheritance and whisper, "You saved me, little one. You gave me something to protect, even when I didn't know how to protect myself." Luna would reach out with chubby hands drawn to the colors. Sophia's heart swelled every time. In an interview months later, her first and only public sit-down, a journalist asked, "If you could go back and stop the slap from happening, would you?" Sophia paused for a long moment. Then she said, "No." The interviewer blinked. "No? I wouldn't stop it?" Sophia repeated. "Because the slap wasn't the worst part. The worst part was who I had to become to survive before that night. I was disappearing for years. That moment was just the spark that lit the fire I'd been burying." She leaned in then. Sometimes pain is the most honest mirror. The clip went viral. But it wasn't the soundbite that people remembered. It was the way she looked into the camera. Fierce, free. A woman who had nothing to prove, but everything to say. That evening, a young artist from Brazil painted Sophia holding Luna under a halo of broken glass and stars. She titled it, "She Stood Anyway." It became the cover of a new feminist art anthology. Sophia didn't know. She was at home, asleep beside her daughter. The truth is, she didn't need the world's applause. She already had what mattered. She had become the woman she needed when she was breaking. The kind of woman little girls would look up to, not for being perfect, but for being real. And the story, it didn't end with revenge. It didn't end with courtrooms or awards. It ended in peace and in a promise that no woman, no matter how forgotten, how betrayed, how quiet, would ever have to stand alone again. As Luna slept that night, wrapped in a soft blanket with sunflowers embroidered on the edge, Sophia whispered into the darkness, "You will grow up knowing that your mother didn't stay down, that she stood, even when it hurt, that she built something beautiful from something brutal. Because that's what women do. They turn pain into power, silence into art, and trauma into truth. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real happy ending. Not the applause, not the gallery walls, but a little girl growing up never having to wonder what strength looks like. Because she will have seen it in every brushstroke, every story, every breath of the woman who brought her into the world." So the story has ended. Our wonderful friends, are you still here with me right now? If you're still watching until this very moment, then I know, somewhere deep inside, you felt something. Maybe a whisper, maybe a wave, but it touched your heart. And that matters. This story wasn't just about betrayal or revenge. It was about reclaiming yourself, even when the world tries to erase you. As the philosopher from the school of heterodoxism once said, healing is not becoming who you were before. It's about creating someone stronger with the pieces. So if you've ever been broken, or silenced, or made to feel small, please remember, your comeback can be louder than the pain. If this story moved you, like it. Share it with someone who needs it. And don't forget to subscribe. And hey, drop a comment. Tell us your story. We're listening, always.